Our current assessment suggests that due to the connections with Trump and the strained relations with China, Kim Jong-un has effectively gained control over both the first and second generations. He now holds a solitary position of authority, ensuring his own safety. Notably, the level of perceived threat has decreased significantly in recent years. An interesting observation occurred earlier this year amidst the Ukraine conflict escalation when North Korea began to provoke once more. Secretary of State Blinken responded with an open invitation for talks with North Korea, void of any prerequisites. Since then, North Korea has maintained a conspicuous silence, indicating their uncertainty regarding the situation. A significant majority, 3/4 to be precise, of global agricultural, manufacturing, and energy shipments traverse the vast oceans, with 2/3 of these passing through East Asia. Without unhindered maritime access, the existing global system is at risk of complete collapse, not just resulting in widespread famine, but also triggering the extensive deindustrialization of significant parts of the planet, with China being the foremost affected. In a realistic assessment, we have been living in a remarkable period since 1945, where the Americans initiated globalization as a means to rally allies against the Soviets, and it was successful. However, it's essential to remember that, for the United States, this was primarily a security strategy, not an economic one. Despite the resurgence of Russian aggression in Ukraine, the American perspective on globalization remains unchanged. If anything, it has been strengthened. Upon scrutinizing all the agreements involving the U.S., be it with Japan, Europe, or other nations in the context of the war. Each one fundamentally centers around security considerations rather than a new Bretton Woods or an evolution of globalization. In fact, except for a single case out of over 80, the Biden administration has upheld and even intensified the trade tariffs and trade wars initiated by Donald Trump. We have reached a point where we have exhausted these approaches. If indeed we have reached an impasse, we are essentially marking time until a disruption occurs within this system. The Ukraine war could very well be the catalyst for such a shift. Examining the Russian geographical expanse, it becomes evident that a significant portion of their territory, stretching from Central Europe to Siberia, is characterized by some of the world's most infertile farmland. They can barely cultivate a single crop of short-season wheat. The lack of a comprehensive national road network has forced them to rely on rail transport for everything, resulting in their forces moving at a painstakingly slow pace, often necessitating foot travel. The regions surrounding their space comprise vast expanses of useless, arid lands, bordering on deserts or Arctic zones. Beyond these are actual geographical barriers like deserts, seas, or mountains. Hence, Russia's strategic approach, spanning 3 centuries, has consistently been to advance from their less favorable lands through the even less hospitable territories on their periphery. They eventually reach those geographic barriers where the movement of a panzer division or similar forces becomes unfeasible. At these points, they forward position their slow-moving troops, creating a defensive line at the access points between these natural barriers. Unfortunately for Ukraine, while they aren't situated within these barriers, they are situated on the path toward 2 of them. From the Russian perspective, Ukraine is akin to Phase 5 in an 8-part plan. This strategy has been executed by the Russians numerous times in other countries of the former Soviet sphere since 1992. If they succeed in Ukraine, they will push forward. The next line of countries that would allow them to actually control those access points include Romania and Poland, both of which are NATO countries. Moving to a more straightforward aspect, the Russians overwhelmingly outnumber the Ukrainians, and they possess a significantly higher number of troops at their disposal, greater tolerance for casualties. The 2-to-3 ratio that the Ukrainians have been inflicting on the Russians in terms of casualty ratios is significantly inadequate. For the Ukrainians to emerge victorious, they need to achieve a series of major fatal events resulting in the death of at least a minimum of 500 Russian troops in a very short span. Achieving this is a formidable task. Moreover, due to the numerical disparity, the Ukrainians can only triumph if they excel in terms of quality and, above all, mobility. However, they haven't been able to do so this winter due to unusually warm weather in Ukraine. The ground has not frozen solid, leading to muddy fields. Consequently, the Ukrainians cannot maneuver effectively in the mud, hindering their ability to use their superior mobility to encircle, cut off, and dismantle the Russian troops. This delay is providing the Russians with the opportunity to reinforce their forces. They have initiated a second mobilization. By the time May 1 arrives, marking the end of spring in the mud season, the Ukrainians will have more troops with enhanced training and better equipment. However, the Russians will have bolstered their ranks by an additional 500,000 men. Thus, before the end of June, we will determine which battle strategy is more effective. The numbers overwhelmingly favor the Russians because, unless the Ukrainians can inflict an 8-to-1 casualty ratio, they will still lose. Yet, if they manage to pull off such a feat and utterly shatter Russian military power, then a new phase begins. By mid-June, we will ascertain the victory. Shifting to the second aspect, let's explore the repercussions on the economic issues you brought up. Russia plays a significant role as a producer or processor of numerous industrial and agricultural materials that currently lack viable substitutes. In the realm of agriculture, potash stands out as the most vital, and in industry, chromium and nickel rank high, as steel production relies heavily on them. The maintenance of this